With all of the recent controversy and frustration surrounding names in the MMO space, a load of MMO players are jumping out of their long-time game of choice and looking to other games in the genre to find a fresh experience. With Amazon's New World now being delayed and Ashes of Creation still a little way off, we're going to be checking out another title which may be the game people are looking for.
Hey, that's so bad, man. But your one seems great.
We're the Bullet Sponges and we are back with another Play or Pass, where we jump in and give you our thoughts on whether we think a game's worth playing or not really worth your time. And today this video is brought to you by no one, not even Raid Shadow Legends, so feel free to subscribe and join us both each week as we review and play through all sorts of different games. If you hadn't already guessed, today we're jumping into the world of Guild Wars 2, a game that's fluctuated in popularity but one that's been pretty consistent since its original launch in 2012. Set in the same universe as the much-loved Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2 is set a few hundred years later. In that time between Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, a handful of dragons have shown up to wreak havoc on the local population. As a player, you choose your race and your class, and as you level, you build yourself up to join other players and bring down these dragons, ruining your homeworld. Guild Wars 2 brings some nice variation to the MMO genre, with its personal story that tailors a narrative to your character, providing you with choices that will impact the overall story arc, the living world that creates storylines in different areas of the map, and the skill system which provides players with a number of different customization options and decent scope for builds that can cater to your playstyle. In addition to the wide range of PvE, the game also contains structured PvP and world versus world for players that enjoy more competitive gameplay. Guild Wars 2 is almost 10 years old, however it still draws in players that want to find a new MMO to try, or simply fancy a change from games like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. Despite its age, it's still one of the pillars of the genre, so we jumped in to let you know if it's a play or a pass.
Now here is an MMO that I think polarizes the player base more than any other. You hear that it's the best from some and overrated from others. So which is it? Well, we wanted to explore what Guild Wars 2 is currently like for ourselves, at a time where its competitors are mostly either self-imploding or showing little promise. There is a glimmer of hope that with an expansion on the way, this might be a place for new MMO players to call home. When you look closely, the character details and foliage isn't anything to write home about, but as we've seen, even with recent titles, is that it's far from what makes the experience. Nor does any of it look bad in any case, but it stays true to an art style loved by the players. After all, it was built on the same engine, albeit modified, than Guild Wars 1. My only annoyance is it seems no matter your hardware, there are a number of situations where the player count will drastically reduce your frame rate to unplayable levels. It's worth noting that it's not a common occurrence, however. So the experience was always intended to be different from others in the genre. No more would you explicitly be hunting down 10 boars for some random dude, only to be asked to tackle the challenge of taking down 10 raptors next. Instead, ANET attempted to create a world that didn't feel so static. And this was by seamlessly integrating your objectives with your interface as you traverse the land of Tyria, by coming across hearts that reward XP upon completion, often requiring you to do tasks in the area, collect mastery points to unlock new build options or utility skills in open world, and take part in events that dynamically chain into each other, triggering different scenarios depending on if the previous one succeeded or failed. Over the years, this has held up as a less monotonous way of leveling, and actually makes it an experience of its own worth going through. To add to this, your character can go through their personal story, which is a unique campaign for each of your characters, and will lead through the various areas of the world to continue completing these dynamic events and story mode dungeons for low-level group content. Once the core game story has been completed, you might want to take a look at one of the expansions. Heart of Thorns most notably introducing the gliding mechanic, and Path of Fire one of the most impressive implementations we've seen of a mount system. Both include tons of new maps, and additional specialization for every class, and more general content too, so it's worth looking into what you might be missing out on if you're just using the free account or aren't bought into all the expansions yet. On top of all this, ArenaNet releases regular Living World seasons designed to keep the overarching story progressing over time. It blocks the image of an MMO world stalled in one situation and keeps players interested in returning to the game. One common theme we found throughout playing Guild Wars 2 is how accessible all areas of gameplay are. Structured instance PvP can be played as early as level 2, allowing you to take any character to the PvP zone and be on completely equal footing to everyone else regardless of level. For mechanics, we have a tab targeting system, which has a fairly established action combat mode that can be toggled on to provide a good hybrid experience between the two. Movement is smooth and responsive, and the characters themselves have this slightly muddy feel when strafing, due to it being noticeably slower than when running forward, which took some getting used to for me, and all movement speed is reduced slightly while in combat. Every character has an endurance bar to dodge roll, allowing you to evade damage. However, jumping was my least favourite part of character movement. You can completely control your trajectory in the air, allowing you to jump into a direction and then fall back to where you jumped from. This was most likely to support features like jumping puzzles, one of the many open world activities littered all over the place that you'll find whilst playing the game. Your character's first 5 skills are defined by the weapon set they have equipped, with some being able to swap between 2 weapon sets. The remaining 5 skills have a range of choices to pick from: a heal, 3 utility and an ultimate, each one normally associated with a particular specialization that you select in order to help define your build. You pick 3 of a number of specializations and can choose perks from those selected trait lines. This adds a high level of customization and allows you to tailor a playstyle to your liking. The skills themselves come in a mixture of instant to a few second cast times, with a range of really interesting damage and status types, keeping the skill ceiling high as you're able to respond appropriately to enemy telegraphs. They feel great to use, really impactful, and are just top tier in overall smoothness. The damage types are generally defined as conditions, which are more dot based, and power being more direct damage. There are boons that increase things like damage, attack speed and healing, CC like stuns, dazes and knockdowns, and combos with various skill types that produce various effects. Like if I use a leap through this smoke field, I get stealth, or if I used an AoE blast inside it, it would grant AoE stealth to allies. Gear will amplify the effects of particular stats at the expense of others, and helps narrow your build into tank, DPS and healer variants, as well as many in between hybrids. The more endgame oriented activities mostly start at max level, which is 80, and splits off into multiple progression paths. On the PvP side, we have structured PvP, where you can queue solo or with up to 4 other players in normal mode, 1 other player in ranked, or a full team of 5 for daily tournaments, which occur every 3 hours. The main structured PvP type is Conquest, where you capture objectives to score points for your team, and there's also the newer 3v3 arena mode. Next you have World v World, where servers fight it out to take control of big open world maps, often joining large groups of allies in larger scale fights. You can join this at low level with scaled up stats, however unlike structured PvP, your gear is taken into account, so it'd be preferable to do at max level. For PvE instance content, you can do 5-man explorable mode dungeons, which takes you to different places and are harder than the story dungeons. Fractals, mini dungeons that can start at a difficulty scale of 1 and can be played up to a difficulty of 100. And for the greatest challenge, players can go through 10-man raids and strike missions. Crafting is definitely on the less complicated side, allowing you to craft gear, consumables and high-end materials that all can be useful throughout any stage of the game. Gear has your standard colour scheme quality types with emphasis on orange exotic gear, which can be easily obtained at max level, and should set you up to start tackling anything you wish to attempt. After that, the pink ascended gear is equivalent to the purple legendary gear, being only 5% stronger than exotic, but the latter having far more impressive visual effects and allowing you to change its stat types and runes on the fly. Thankfully, because of how obtainable exotic gear is, the gear treadmill is something players won't have to worry themselves with, leaving you to grind for the things that matter, the style points. With a wardrobe full of different armor skins, outfits and dyes that allow some of the best personalization that I've come across in a mainstream MMO. In the past, you might have described the game as a casual player's dream, as it's full of activities you can just pick up without having to lock out your evening for it. But with the addition of your more typical higher skill level content, like ranked PvP and raids, it showed over time that there's something for everyone. I'm not without my gripes, however. The character movement has this running through treacle feel for me at times, due possibly to the difference in speed in certain directions. And I'm not a fan of having to control my trajectory when jumping around. And being a game where a load of value comes from unlocking visual effects, there are so many amazing looking skins that are locked behind premium currencies or buying gems. Even if you're wealthy enough to convert a lot of gold to gems, it detracts from the more interesting MMO experiences of finding items you want to obtain and going through specific in-game activities to acquire them. Guild Wars 2 really does well at funneling character progression through multiple avenues of gameplay, so you're seldom forced to do something you aren't interested in. Everything is accessible, and there is a sense of fairness between players due to differences in gear not being an issue. The game has some great quality of life features too, allowing you to change specializations and gear on the fly at no cost. Fast travel straight to the areas of the game you wish to play through, and allowing you to bring your friends along for the ride, including on your personal story. And it's these kinds of great qualities that have kept me coming back time and time again since release.
Guild Wars 2 has been at the top of the list for recommended MMOs for the last 10 years, sharing this top spot alongside World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. For the most part, we believe this is down to its consistency. While there are other games that do some things better, Guild Wars 2 does most things well and few things poorly. The game itself is enough of a departure from the copy-paste World of Warcraft style MMOs for it to be a breath of fresh air for players who have found themselves in games that are essentially WoW clones. The personal story is probably one of the best, if not the best, MMO storyline that you can play. You can play solo or with your friends. It introduces you to a number of important characters, draws you into the world, and forces you to make impactful choices along the way. In addition to the personal story, there are other design choices that make the world feel lived in and dynamic. For example, you can be walking across the map to your next story mission, or to go and sell some stuff at a town, when all of a sudden a nearby village might be attacked by centaurs and you can join the fight to help defend them. Or a trader is passing from town to town and you can help protect them on their journey. Character customization is also really good, with a number of different playable races and options for you to customize your look, and your abilities themselves have enough variation. While your 1 to 5 skills are locked to your weapon choice, meaning that there's a little less customization compared to other games in the genre, there's still plenty of customization in how you want to build your character, so that you have a pretty large scope in how you want to tweak your character for your playstyle. Graphically, the game has held up over time, and only really occasionally shows its age. The game is also updated with regular content, with an expansion just round the corner, so there's plenty of things for players to do to keep them busy. Overall, we gave Guild Wars 2 a 4 out of 5. And for us, it's a play. If you're looking for an MMO to get into and you haven't played Guild Wars 2 before, or you're looking to jump back in after some time away, we think it's a great MMO to get into. It's still well populated, and whether you like PvP or PvE, you'll have a load of content to enjoy. Let us know in the comments what you think of the game, or whether or not you agree with our review. We're the Bullet Sponges, and we'll see you in the next one.